Okay, so I got my Spider-Man turn off the dark shirt on. So let's do this. So anyways, guys, so where do I begin? So as many of you know, many of you who know who not Green Rock, Fireball Studio 7 is probably know that he's making a new Spider-Man film. Now he did two other Spider-Man fan films and one other fan series. He did the Spectacular Spider-Man, the Spectacular Spider-Man 2, and the Spider-Man Chronicles. Now, if you want to go check those out, you can't because they got deleted off of YouTube. But now he's doing a reboot with a new actor called Spider-Man: A New Hero. So I got to see the film before anybody else did, except for DDS Studios because he watched it with me. I watched the entire thing. The only thing was the actor who played Spider-Man. He he had to send in some voice things, so because of that, some of the editing wasn't done. But overall, um, most of it was, and so pretty much I I got the impression from what Fireball was telling me, which was that what I saw was essentially what is going to be the movie that you will see in a few days. So I asked Fireball, would you like me to review it? And so he said yes. Now, because this is an early review, it's not been posted publicly onto YouTube, I can't give any spoilers away. So I'm not going to give any spoilers. So if you're thinking, oh no, 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 I gotta leave. I don't want any spoilers. See ya. Don't worry. There's no spoilers in this review. The only spoilers I'm going to be revealing are the spoilers which Fireball Studio 7, or the things that Fireball Studio 7 has already revealed to you guys. Like, for instance, Flint Marko. Flint Marko is the villain. Um, Fireball Studio 7, he talked about that before and he basically revealed that. So I don't have to, you know, keep keep that from you because you guys already know Flint Marko is the villain. Um, there's also one other villain. Um, Fireball Studio 7 did mention this villain. I won't say who. There is another villain. He mentioned that this villain was going to be in the film, but he never revealed who he was. And this villain only has a short. Well, technically, he's throughout the entire film, but we don't learn who this guy is until the toward the end of the film. Um, there's only one point where we actually get to see who this bad guy is full on. And it's a bad guy who typically doesn't um, exist in a lot of Spider-Man fan films. And because usually when you think of Spider-Man fan films, usually you'll see that the villains are Shocker, probably because Shocker isn't really, you don't need a big budget to do Shocker. Um, Shocker's in my fan film. He's a little bit different. He's going to have a much bigger role in the Sinister Six fan film, which I am going to be doing, but he only has a small role in the Spider-Man. Um, but Shocker's been in a ton of Spider-Man fan films, mainly because of a low, he's easy to do. And then also Green Goblin, but usually, and also Venom too. But usually when it's Venom, people like to try and go with the ultimate version, not the classic version with Eddie Brock as a reporter and what have you. Mainly, I think the reason why is because they did it in Action Inc., now known as Six Side Studios, did the ultimate Eddie Brock version in Avenging Spider-Man, and that was a big success. So I think because of that, um, many people have been using Venom, and but a lot of fan films will also use Green Goblin, and usually it'll be Harry Osborn. it won't be Norman because it's easy to get 18 actor. But in this, you get Flint Marco, and another guy who I'm not gonna say, but I will say that he's not a villain that you've seen in a ton of Spider-Man fan films. Usually they end up being, well, in this film they're the bad guys, even though even though they're not in a lot of Spider-Man fan films. So I thought that part was cool. But my overall thoughts on the film, um, I thought it was good. I'm interested to see how people are going to react to this film. Um, I think it's that type of thing. If you guys remember the Piggy Inks fan films, mainly I think Spider-Man: A New Age, that was considered to be the best out of all of his films, and it's kind of on par with that. I think I really don't know. The thing is, with these types of fan films, I see a lot of people that will hate on them, but you got to consider the fact that these are made by children. I've seen a lot of 12-year-olds, frankly, that have made Spider-Man fan films. So I think the reason why the plot might not be all that great or the special effects might not be all that great is because they don't have the resources to do that. In that scenario, I think you have to judge by the love for the character much rather than the quality. But when you have like an adult, like a professional adult who does a Spider-Man fan film, typically for me, I usually judge that with much higher standards. Um, but with fan films like these, you got to consider much more effort. But in terms of quality for this, I think it's definitely his best fan film so far. If you're wondering if I thought it was better than Spectacular Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man 2 and the Chronicles, um, yes, I did think that. Could there be room for improvement? Uh, Definitely. Um, the plot is not bad. It's kind of what you'd expect, though, from this type of film. Um, I'm not. I guess this really isn't a spoil. I don't know if you consider this a spoiler, but I'm just gonna say it. It's not an origin. I'm just gonna throw that right out there. Peter, at the time it happens, Peter is already Spider-Man, but you get the impression that he hasn't been Spider-Man all that long. But he is Spider-Man. There's no origin. You don't see him get bit by the spider. You don't see Uncle Ben or anything. Um, he is, already Spider-Man, but he hasn't been Spider-Man for all that long. Um, Now, what else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, the villains themselves. Well, yeah, the villains. How were the villains? You're wondering. Well, obviously, the one villain doesn't really get that much screen time, so I can't really judge that villain. That one villain who I mentioned earlier. But the other villain, Flint Marco, I will talk about him. I thought Flint Marco was actually a decent character for a fan film. Um, he actually had legitimate motivation for what he did. You know, um, I'm not going to say those motivations, but because of something traumatic that happened to him in his lifetime, he hates the world, he hates mankind. Um, and so, because of that, that kind of added more depth and more interest to this type of character. And because of that, I could invest myself into Flint. Um, and he was definitely a very well done character. That's good on that respect. Another good thing about this film is the fact that it could have ended up just being, because for those of you who don't know, Fireball Studios has said on multiple occasions that he is setting up a shared universe, which after Spider-Man: A New Hero, The fan films he'll have include Spider-Man: Darkness Within, Spider-Man versus Daredevil, and Ultimates. This could have easily just have been, a setup for the Ultimates, or a setup for uh, Spider-Man versus Daredevil, but it really wasn't. I mean, to be fair, they did have something at the very beginning that said the first film of the FCU, which I assume stands for the Fireball Studio 7 Cinematic Universe, or the Fireball Cinematic Universe, or the Fireball Studio Cinematic Universe, or whatever. But aside from that, it mostly focused on just trying to make a legitimately good film. So it's an improvement. I will say that. Um, but it's not a, for me, it's not miles times better. If you're expecting a film a fan film that's going to be, if you're expecting this film to essentially be a zillion times better than the Spectacular Spider, if you expect this to basically um, make uh, this big, if you're expecting it, how do I explain this? If you're expecting this film to be so good that it makes the Spectacular Spider-Man 2 look like Batman and Robin, you're gonna be a little bit disappointed because it's not that much better, but it's definitely, you can definitely see that they have improved since the Spectacular Spider-Man 2 and the Chronicles. But it definitely, again, if you're expecting something that's just going to be, you know, knock it right out of the ballpark good, you might be a little bit disappointed. Um, but I do think if you kind of are used to the type of standards that Spider-Man, that typical Spider-Man fan films set up, then you should be good, and I think you'll enjoy it and you'll have a good time. And a lot of times when I see a Spider-Man fan film that maybe isn't the best, I'll watch it, but I might not have, you know, the most enjoyable time watching it. It's not that it's unbearable. It's just that it might not be that fun to watch because maybe it's based off maybe just because it's a little bit generic. But I will say this, with Spider-Man: A New Hero, I legitimately had a good time watching that film, even though um, it's easy to say it may not be as good as other Spider-Man fan films out there. Now, do I think it's one of the best Spider-Man fan films? No. But I definitely think this is a step in the right direction for Fireball Studios 7. So, yeah, for my list, this is my only review. I would say it's a pretty good movie. I'd say go see it on YouTube when it comes out. So what would I give? And you're probably wondering, what rating am I going to give? You know, I think it's hard to. Um, I mean, I might end up changing this rating as I rewatch it, especially when it comes out on YouTube. The finalized version comes out on YouTube. I might look at it and say, I might watch it over a few times and say, oh, well, maybe my opinion changed on this or that. But at the moment, I'm going to give Spider Man: A New Hero a solid 8 out of 10. Again, I would, if you are wondering how this movie is, personally, I think if you liked, here's how I'm going to sum up this entire review. If you liked Piggy Inc.'s Ultimate Spider-Man 2, you'll probably, or if you even loved it, because I've seen people say they loved it, if you're one of the people that loved it, you're going to love Spider-Man: A New Hero. If you hated Ultimate Spider-Man 2 from Biggie Inc., um, you may not like uh, Spider-Man: A New Hero all that much. But that's my review, my early review. It has not come out yet. I might do a spoiler review when it comes out and everybody's seen it. But for now, these are my thoughts. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I'd be happy to answer them. Make sure to subscribe, and yeah. So I'll see you later, guys. Bye.